An attitude is a hypothetical construct. Attitudes we are discussing. An attitude is a hypothetical construct that represents an individual's degree of like or dislike for an item. It is a hypothetical construct that represents an individual's degree of like or dislike for an item. Attitudes are generally positive or negative views of a person, place, thing, or event. This is often referred to as the attitude object. People can also be conflicted or ambivalent toward an object, meaning that they simultaneously possess both positive and negative attitudes toward that item in question. Well, basically, attitudes are judgments, and they can be explained using the theoretical model, which is called the ABC model: A for effect, B for behavior, and C for cognition. The affective response is an emotional response that expresses an individual's degree of preference for an entity, and the behavioral intention is a verbal indication, a typical behavioral tendency of an individual. And the cognitive response is a cognitive evaluation of the entity that constitutes an individual's beliefs about the object. Most attitudes are the result of either direct experience or observational learning from the environment. Unlike personality, attitudes are expected to change as a function of experience. Many researchers have argued that hereditary variables may affect attitudes, but they believe also that they may do so indirectly. For example, if one inherits the disposition to become an extrovert, this may affect one's attitudes to certain styles of music. There are numerous theories of attitude formation and attitude change. These include consistency theories that imply that we must be consistent in our beliefs and values. The most famous example of such a theory is the dissonance reduction theory, associated with Leon Festinger, although there are others such as the balance theory of Fritz Heider. Now, dissonance reduction means when you experience, when you have a belief about a particular thing, and when you experience that thing, and that experience gives you a different kind of feeling, which uh, which negates or nullifies your earlier belief, then there is a change in the belief. You had a belief about a thing, as for example, that it is positive, and when you had that experience of that particular thing, and if the experience created a negative impression, then your attitude will change about that object. That's the dissonance reduction theory. Other theories are self-perception theory, persuasion, elaboration likelihood model, social judgment theory, and balance theory. Now, attitudes can be changed through persuasion. The celebrated work of Carl Hovland at the Yale University in 1950s and 60s helped to advance knowledge of persuasion. In Hovland's view, we should understand attitude change as a response to communication. He and his colleagues did experimental research into the factors that affect the persuasiveness of a message. Target characteristics. These are the characteristics that refer to the person who receives and processes a message. One such trait is intelligence. It seems that more intelligent people are less likely persuaded by one-sided messages. Another variable that has been studied in this category is self-esteem. Although it's sometimes thought that those higher in self-esteem are less easily persuaded, there is some evidence that the relationship between self-esteem and persuadability is actually curvilinear, with people of moderate self-esteem being more easily persuaded than those of high and low self-esteem levels. The mind frame and the mood of the target also plays a role in the process. Source characteristic. The major source characteristics are expertise, trustworthiness, and interpersonal attraction or attractiveness. The credibility of a perceived message has been found to be a key variable here. If one reads a report about health and believes it came from a professional medical journal, one may be more easily persuaded than if one believes it is from a popular newspaper. Some psychologists have debated whether this is a long-lasting effect, and researchers found the effect of telling people that a message came from a credible source disappeared after several weeks, and it was actually called the sleeper effect. Whether there is a sleeper effect is controversial. Received wisdom is that if people are informed of the source of a message before hearing it, there is less likelihood of a sleeper effect than if they are told a message and then told its source. Message characteristics. The nature of the message plays a role in persuasion. Sometimes presenting both sides of a story is useful to help change attitudes. And also, a message can appeal to an individual's cognitive evaluation to help change an attitude. In the central route to persuasion, the individual is presented with the data and motivated to evaluate the data and arrive at an attitude changing conclusion. Emotion and attitude change. Emotion is a common component in persuasion, social influence, and attitude change. There's a lot of research in this particular area also, and there are several models. Like we talked about the elaboration likelihood model. It's a cognitive processing model. Now, cognitive processing is the central route, and effective emotion processing is often associated with the peripheral route. So these are all theoretical explanations about how we go about changing our attitudes. Components of emotional appeals. Any discrete emotion can be used in persuasive appeal. They may include jealousy, disgust, indignation, fear, or anger. Fear is one of the most studied emotional appeals in communication and social influence research. Fear appeals have been thought of as messages that attempt to achieve opinion change by establishing the negative consequences of failing to agree with the advocated position. Now, many fundamentalists, religious leaders, even terrorists, they use fear, and that's how they try to bring about. Implicit and explicit attitudes. There is considerable research on implicit attitudes, which are generally unacknowledged or outside of awareness but have effects that are measurable through sophisticated methods using people's response to stimuli. Implicit and explicit attitudes seem to affect people's behavior in different ways. They tend not to be strongly associated with each other, although in some cases they are. The relationship between them is poorly understood. Implicit is what you have within, explicit is what you express outside. Carl Gustav Jung. Attitude is one of Jung's 57 definitions. Jung's definition of attitude is a readiness of the psyche to act or react in a certain way. Attitudes often come in pairs, that's what he says, one conscious and the other unconscious. Within this broad definition, Jung defines several attitudes. The main attitude dualities that Jung defines are the following: consciousness and the unconscious. The presence of two attitudes is extremely frequent, one conscious and the other unconscious. This means that consciousness has a constellation of contents different from that of the unconscious, a duality particularly evident in neurosis. Extraversion and introversion. This pair is so elementary to Jung's theory of types that he labeled them the attitude types. Rational and irrational types. I conceive reason as an attitude, Jung says. The rational attitude subdivides into the thinking and feeling psychological functions, each with its attitude. The irrational attitude subdivides into the sensing and intuition psychological functions, each with its attitude. There is thus a typical thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuitive attitude, according to Jung. Individual and social attitudes are additional, and many of these individual and social attitude are labeled as different isms. ISMS, isms is the suffix. In addition, Jung discusses the abstract attitude. When I take an abstract attitude, that's a different abstraction is contrasted with concretism. By this, Jung says, I mean a peculiarity of thinking and feeling that is the antithesis of abstraction. Concretism is the antithesis. For example, I hate his attitude for being sarcastic. That's an example. MBTI, Myers-Briggs Typology Inventory, is a very exhaustive, scientifically well-researched inventory which makes an attempt at assessing the attitudes of a person, and it's based on Jung's theory. And we also have the Keirsey temperament sorter, which is a very simple questionnaire. About 70 questions are there, and it will give you a set of letters which indicate your personality, which is considered as sum of various attitudes that you have.